The laughter started before the cake was even cut. It wasn't the warm kind that lifts a room, but the sharp, careless kind that slips between smiles and lands like a bruise. Mark Jensen stood in his sister's backyard holding a paper plate with his name on it and blue icing. Tried to pretend he didn't hear it. 42 years old, mechanic who worked late nights. A man who showed up for everyone else and asked for very little in return. And yet, there he was, shrinking inside his own birthday party. It had been meant as a surprise. His sister Elaine had insisted. "You never celebrate," she'd said. "Just this once." So she invited neighbors, a few old friends, and some co-workers from the shop. People Mark thought knew him well enough to be kind. He was wrong. Someone made a joke about his old truck parked out front. Another laughed about the grease stains that never seemed to leave his hands. A man from the neighborhood, already half drunk, clapped Mark on the back and said loudly, "42 and still fixing other people's junk? Guess some folks never move up." The laughter followed again, louder this time. Mark smiled the way he always did when things hurt, small and apologetic, as if he were the one who'd made a mistake. He looked toward the gate, hoping no one would notice if he slipped away. Elaine caught his eye and frowned, sensing something was wrong, but before she could cross the yard, another comment flew. "Hey Mark," someone called out. "Did you bring your biker buddies, or are they too busy scaring kids at gas stations?" That one landed hard. Mark's smile faded. He set the plate down carefully, his hands suddenly unsteady. For years he'd avoided talking about that part of his life. Not because he was ashamed, but because people never asked with good intentions. They only saw the patches, the leather, the rumors. They never saw the nights he'd sat beside hospital beds, the funerals, the promises kept when no one else showed up. He took a slow breath. "I think I'm going to head out," he said quietly. Elaine opened her mouth to protest, but then it happened. A low rumble rolled down the street. At first it sounded like distant thunder, then it grew louder, deeper. The kind of sound you feel in your chest before you understand what it is. Conversations stalled, heads turned. One motorcycle appeared at the end of the street, then another, and another. Chrome glinted in the afternoon sun. Engines idled with controlled power. One by one, they turned into the driveway, lining up with careful precision. Leather vests, patches, faces weathered by miles and years. 70 bikes in all, filling the space, spilling onto the curb, stretching farther than anyone at the party could see. The yard went silent. Someone dropped a plastic cup. It hit the ground and rolled, the sound impossibly loud in the stillness. Mark closed his eyes. He hadn't expected this. The engines cut off almost at once, leaving a ringing quiet. Boots hit pavement. Men and women dismounted, removing helmets, scanning the yard not with menace, but with focus. A tall man with a gray beard stepped forward. He looked past the guests, straight at Mark. "There you are, brother," he said, his voice calm but carrying. "Thought we were late." Mark swallowed, his throat tight. "You didn't have to come," he said softly. The man gave a genuine smile. "Yeah," he replied. "We did." One by one, the riders approached. No shouting, no threats. Just quiet greetings, handshakes, and hugs. They formed a loose circle around Mark, not to intimidate, but to include. Elaine stood frozen, her hand over her mouth. The same neighbor who'd been laughing minutes earlier took a step back, color draining from his face. I was just joking," he muttered, though no one had accused him of anything. The gray-bearded man turned slowly, his eyes settling on the group. "We're not here for trouble," he said evenly. "We're here for a birthday." He nodded toward Mark. This man stood by us when it wasn't convenient, when it cost him time, money, and sleep. When people walked away, he stayed. So today, we show up. Another rider, a woman with streaks of silver in her braid, stepped forward holding a small box. "You remember Jake?" she said to Mark. He nodded, his eyes glassy. "He asked us to give you this," she continued. "Said you fixed his bike for free when he couldn't afford it. Said you never made him feel small." Mark opened the box. Inside was a simple metal chain with a small worn tag attached. Jake's tag, the one he'd worn until the accident. Mark's breath hitched. He closed his fingers around it, pressing it into his palm. No one laughed now. The man who'd mocked him stared at the ground. The gray-bearded man cleared his throat. "We heard someone here thought Mark hadn't moved up in life. Let me tell you something. Moving up isn't about money or titles. It's It's about who answers the phone at 2 in the morning. It's about who shows up when it's hard. He looked around the yard. This man is rich in the ways that matter. Silence followed. Elaine finally found her voice. There's cake, she said weakly. The woman with the silver braids smiled. Perfect. A gentle laugh rippled through the yard. Plates were passed again. Riders mingled, speaking politely and respectfully. Mark stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed. The shame he'd felt minutes earlier wasn't his to carry. Later, as the sun dipped low, the engines started again, one by one. The gray-bearded man lingered. You okay? He asked. Mark nodded. Yeah, I think I am. The man chuckled. Good, because you deserve better than what you got earlier. Elaine sat beside him as the last rider left. I didn't know, she whispered. Mark smiled, this time without apology. Most people don't, and that's okay. For the first time that day, he felt tall. Not because 70 riders had shown up, but because they had reminded everyone, including him, that kindness leaves tracks. And if you live right, the right people will always find their way back to you. Thanks for watching. Follow for more stories that matter.